If Detroit is serious about winning basketball games, Simone Fonecchio must start as soon as possible.
Lane, skies a jam. Dynamite dunk and the crowd loves it.
Welcome back to Pistons Intellect. I'm your host, Jack Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at Jack_Kelly_313. And if you're feeling so kind, please hit that subscribe button and support the show in any way you can. Now, on today's episode, there's a few things I want to hit on, as you can see to the right there. But I want to start with where I opened the video, and that is about Detroit's recent trade acquisition in Simone Fonecchio. It's time. It's time for him to start. He started while Stu was out in his first 5 or so games, and he looked awesome. And since he's gone back to the bench, Detroit's starting 5 has struggled. Now, I was one to fall victim in that Bulls game a few games ago where the Pistons held Chicago to like 2 of 27 3-point shooting. Some of that's obviously just luck, but that game the Pistons played physical. That starting 5 of all the core 4 plus Stu looked really fun. But I think we've seen in these past 3 games, it's already been 3 games since then, that Pistons are back on a losing streak, and that starting 5 struggles. It might have stretches where it looks good because there's a heap of athleticism, there's heaps of length, and there is some scoring ability, but it is getting kind of ridiculous now that Simone Fonecchio isn't starting, particularly after the Miami game yesterday, where he had 22 points. I think he had like 15, 16 in the first half. He was brilliant. He's the only guy that could knock a shot from deep. And I mean, since he got to Detroit, I think he's played, let me pull up the stats here. He's played 10 games for Detroit. In those 10 games, he's averaging 15 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal a game. But most importantly, he's shooting 47% from the field, 42% from 3-point range on 6.5 attempts per game. And look, he doesn't get to the line a ton, but he's shooting around 80% there. So the case could be made he's the Pistons' most efficient scorer. He's not the best, but he's the Pistons' most efficient scorer. He's 6'7", 6'8". He's he's 28 years old. He is the ideal 3 or 4 man to start in this Pistons lineup. And, there's only so much longer the Pistons can start all 3 of Asar, Jalen Duren, and Isaiah Stewart next to Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. Predictably, since the Pistons have gone back to that starting 5 in the past 4 games, Cade's efficiency's gone down, turnovers have crept back up, and part of that is due to he was just playing at a ridiculously high level those first 3 or 4 games after the All-Star break. But I mean, a lot of it's to do with the reduced spacing and teams just not having to they can just collapse to the paint, and they can cheat off the likes of Asar and Stu in the corner and really trap and make Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham's life miserable in terms of their dribble drive game, their pick and roll game. And they desperately need space, and the Pistons look the best against the Heat when Fontecchio was on the court. And I'm just going to read out some numbers here, because if you weren't convinced yet that Fontecchio should be starting, I think these numbers will help you. So the Pistons this season, and this is probably a whole debate, another conversation in itself once the season's over. The Pistons this season have only had 3 lineups play 100 minutes or more, which is, that's incredibly low to only have 3 5-man units play 100 minutes or more. Like, that's a result of injury. That's a result of roster turnover. That's a result of Monty Williams' bizarre rotations. But nonetheless, they've had 3 lineups of 5 guys play 100 minutes or more. Now, the current starting 5, Isaiah Stewart, Cade, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, have played the most minutes of any 5-man unit for the Pistons. They've played 116. They have an offensive rating of 109, which is bad. So when you're thinking of this 5, you're going to think, okay, I've always thought in my mind, if you're going to play this 5, It's for rebounding. It's for defensive purposes. And it's to kind of push it in transition a little bit because you've got a heap of athletes, heap of speed, and a guy like Cade who can kind of help there. But this team, the defensive rating of these 5 is 120. That is horrific. That is the worst of any of these lineups that have played 100 minutes or more. And it results in a negative 11 net rating, which is basically the Pistons get outscored with this lineup on the court by 11 points per 100 possessions. So every time these guys are on the court, it averages out to them being outscored by 11 points. So there's that. Now, if we want to talk about the other 5-man unit that's played 100 minutes, that was the original starting 5 of the season, which was Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Durant, Asar Thompson, and Isaiah Stewart. Similar numbers, an even worse offensive rating of 101, which is, in this day and age, like that's hard to do, to put a 5-man lineup out of your starting group that can be that poor offensively. Then defensive, they were a bit better, giving up 112 points per 100 possessions, but you're still getting outscored by 10 points with this unit. Now, the two common traits between the two 5-man units I've just read out is that you have no shooting around Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham. So just keep that in mind. Now, when we go to the next and the third and final 5-man unit that the Pistons have rolled out this season for over 100 minutes, that is Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Simone Fonecchio, Jalen Durant. Play 110 minutes together, second most of any 5-man unit. They have an offensive rating of 111, which is the best of any of the lineups I've read out so far. And then, even more impressively, and surprisingly, probably to some, but their defensive rating is 108, which is a really, really solid number. That's where, so when you think about putting Fontecchio in the lineup, a lot of us think immediately to kind of the offensive drive that gives this unit. But when you look at the numbers, the Pistons are much better defensively and they're a little bit better offensively. Now, I don't think the leap offensively with Fontecchio, it's not going to come because you still have a guy like Asar in there who's, I don't want to say he's a non-factor on offense. That's unfair, but his jumper makes it tough for him consistently to be a threat night in, night out. Then you have Jalen Durant, who's also a non-shooter. And then you have Ivy, who of late's been pretty inconsistent, particularly since Fontecchio started. So if we had got that Jaden Ivey where he had that five-game stretch pre-All-Star break before Fontecchio came, where he's averaging like 27 on great efficiency, you mix that Jaden Ivey in, I think that offensive rating gets a bit better. He's a guy that in this 5-man unit has struggled of late. And once again, that him and Cade's fit together is probably a conversation after this season, if not definitely the midpoint next season. But I still believe it can work. So I guess what I'm saying here is that 5-man unit with Fontecchio in it and the core 4 is the best defensively and the best offensively of any Pistons unit that's played 100 minutes or more. So I think, I'm sorry for all the numbers there, but I just wanted to lay that all out so everyone can get a grasp of the different lineups that we've seen from the starting point of view, and just to paint a picture of how obvious it is that Fontecchio is a crucial element to making that core 4 work. And we've known this the whole time. This is why, for me, Bojan always had to start, no matter what you thought of him defensively. And I think we're finding out, and me in particular, his defense was probably worse than we thought on the Pistons with seeing his struggles in New York. But, that's why he always had to start and be on the floor with this core 4 unit, because you need a guy to unlock some spacing. Because as much as we love all 4 of these talents individually, right now they are not the best fit. And it's not saying they can't become a good fit together. And I think, to be honest, if they're going to fit well together and produce winning basketball, they're going to have to be awesome defensively, because offensively, none of them. Cade's rounding into a good shooter, but for their career so far, none of the core 4 average or good shooters. So you need a guy like Fontecchio who can do a little bit off the bounce, who can knock down spot up threes, who can space in the corner, who can cut. You just, it's just so obvious now, especially these last 3 games, especially now after you brought Isaiah Stewart back. and you've put him alongside this core four, and it is quite obvious across these past 4 games that, it's not working. It's not working offensively or defensively. And I think for a lot of people where the frustration comes from is, if the core four plus Stu was giving you awesome defense, instead of giving up 120 points per 100 possession, which would be last in the league or close to it, if they were holding teams, to 105 points per 100 possessions, and they're only scoring 109 per 100 possessions, I think we'd still be fine with that because at least they're awesome defensively. But when you look at games like in Miami where defensive miscues cost them at times and turnovers because of a lack of spacing and congestion, it's really tough to kind of justify, to try and figure out in your head why Monty continues to start this. And he had an interesting comment, I don't know if it was pre or post game, where he said that they aren't like other teams. They want their guys to take long range twos if they're comfortable. They're not going to jack up 43s a game just for the sake of it. And it's like, he's like, he's basically saying like, I want our guys to shoot shots they're comfortable with. And it's like, he made a comment pre-season that he's not pro analytics. Like, he's an old school kind of coach, and whilst I can respect that stubbornness to kind of and I think there's definitely like some of this playing the core four and Stu is like, these are your 5 young guys. Like, there's Marcus Sasser as well, who I think could hang around, but I think these, like the 5 they're starting right now, is they're trying to figure out if they can start them and if that's going to work. But I think like you don't have much more time to mess around with this because you cannot close this season. I've been saying this for a while now since the season became lost. Like, the one goal is to find a 5-man unit that heading into this offseason, works. And that if you don't make a huge move over the summer, which we know they keep talking about doing with this money, but if you don't make a huge move, you have 5 guys you can put out there that are going to give you, positive minutes. You cannot come into the season with next year with a starting lineup that's like, hasn't got many minutes together. There's confusion with roles. There's players being like, you just need to find 5 players that can build some chemistry to close the season. And that can all go out the window if the Pistons make a huge splash, like trade or signing over the summer. But, you cannot solely rely on just free agency. This is Detroit. Like, I'm not from Detroit. This isn't shade at Detroit, but, we as a team, we do not get good free agents. It just doesn't happen. So the fact now you've found a 5-man unit that is working and the numbers show it's working, but even if you don't believe in analytics, like just watching it, like it just makes sense. Like Fontecchio and Asar, like I know Asar's jumper is not ideal, but he's an excellent rebounder. Fontecchio is a decent rebounder. They're both 6'7", 6'8". I think they complement each other pretty well. Duran being a non-shooter makes that an issue. It's always going to be an issue, that kind of thing. But for right now, I think you need to go with this 5. It's obvious. It's plain as that. Like, I don't know. It's clear. Think of any word to describe it. Like, it is just obvious. So I hope Monty can make a trade. We've seen him begin to finally figure out a rotation. He only played 9 guys yesterday, but we have to remember Quentin Grimes has been out the past 2 games and he's going to be out. So, but, Sasser coming back, Flynn played no minutes against Miami. That's what we want to see. It's sad that it's gotten to this point where we have to analyze rotations like this, but, he staggered Jaden Ivey in that second quarter, or end of the first, start of second, and there were some good results there with the bench. Stu not playing at the backup 5 exclusively when Durant's not on the court continues to baffle me. But I think maybe they're just trying to figure out what they have with Wiseman. We as fans, there's some that have hope with Wise. I don't think there's a home in Detroit for him, at least as the backup 5. But look, he's gotten better, but it's still so frustrating with the rotations. It just takes continually just like I hate being that fan that just bashes coaches. Like I've said this multiple times. Like I don't want to come on here and just bash coaches because I think it's an incredibly hard job. But yeah, some of like this Fontecchio decision is just baffling. And look, he did pretty much close with him yesterday. So, I have to give him props there. But I think it's time he starts and Stu is coming off the bench. Or if you really want to start Stu, Asar comes off the bench. And they all still play the same minutes. But I think you just need to help get Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey going earlier in games and earlier in the first half with more spacing. And it just makes sense. It just makes sense. So I'm going to move on. That's enough. Let me know if you maybe disagree with me, if you think Fontecchio coming off the bench is a good thing. I haven't seen much of that conversation online, but I'd love to hear your comments if you think I'm wrong or if you agree with me. So moving on, I just wanted to quickly touch on Cade's post-game comments after that Miami loss. Obviously, that game, Pistons are very competitive. They were in it pretty much the whole time. They showed fight. It was kind of like the first game of the season. They hung around, had a chance to win. There's a couple of plays down the stretch where, Jaden Ivey turnover, a really, really poor missed assignment from Ivey and Cade in transition defensively, cost the Pistons. I think they had it to 3 points and neither of them, they both went to defend Duncan Robinson in the corner and just left a wide open driving lane for Jimmy Butler to get to the rim. That was disappointing. But look, it was a similar game. Like they were in it. They could have won it. And Cade after the game kind of just, pretty much normal speak. But he was asked a question about how's the losing kind of affected him this season, especially in these closer games where it's one or two decisions that if they go the Pistons' way, they might win the game or at least extend it to overtime. And he kind of just made a comment about how, like, at this stage of the season, with the way it's gone, he and his teammates are kind of focus more on their own games and growing their own games individually because they now believe that's what's going to take this team to the next level next season, as opposed to focusing on winning and losing games. And I thought that was an interesting comment. And kind of a bit of a, like, just me listening to that as a fan, I was a bit like disheartened by that, not because of anything he said, but just because, like, I still think the remainder of this season, I think the wins and losses matter. Like, I truly think the wins and losses matter. And, like, I fully understand what Kate's saying. Like, our individual games developing offensively. He noted the missed defensive assignments and kind of how that cost his team turnovers. Like, I get by focusing on individual games, obviously is going to help this team, progress next season. But I think I want to hear him say more like, we need to win games. Like, I want to hear more of an urgency. And I think that's not like I think these last, I think they've got like 18 to 20 games left. Like, I feel like you should be trying to go 500. Like, I know you might feel like your talent, like you're outmatched each night. And this losing has gotten to a point where you can clearly tell, like, this team, even at the best of times, probably enters games knowing, or they've just been weighed down so much that they probably don't believe they can win most games. And they're going out there and kind of, from what I got from Cade, in a unified way, they're playing for themselves a little bit, like in the sense of make sure you're still developing your area, your game. Make sure, I think this stems into why, like, Wiseman keeps getting minutes because the front office want him to develop and see what they can get out of him before his contract is due for an extension this summer. Like, which kind of annoys me because I think you should be trying to win games. You should be putting like, if you are invested in Monty Williams, like you are, if you're not going to fire him, you should be trying to win games right now because he's not a development coach. Like, we've seen that he does not. Some might say the way he handled Ivy develops players, but I think you should be trying to win every game right now. And that should be, yeah. I just think like, if they go into this, I feel like I'm going on the same rant again. They go into this summer on like winning 2 out of their last 8 games or 2 out of the last 10, or they enter on like a 6-game losing streak. Like, maybe I'm overblowing this. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I'll be fucking worried. Like if this team cannot put together one patch of play in this season, particularly obviously between now and the end of the season, where you go, oh, I can see some of the vision here. And they've done it for like 5-10 games. If they don't put that together, if they don't clean out the entire, like for me to have, basically what I'm saying, if they don't put some form of consistent play together in a 10-game sample, unless this front office and coaching staff is like cleaned out and half the roster's turnover, like I'm going to be so nervous for the next season because I just feel like they're just going to come back, just probably not sign anyone and just come back, throw the young guys out there. And that's when I'll be really getting concerned about the development of the young guys. Obviously, I know all 4 aren't going to be all-stars, but when I hear winning's not the priority, when you're in year 4 of a rebuild and you've just had a historically horrific losing season, like, this isn't me getting angry at Cade. This is just me being like, winning should just be a priority all the time, no matter what. Like, I just get development, but with the circumstances of where they're at right now, like, yeah, I'm a bit over development. As essential as I know it is, his comments, they probably mean absolutely nothing. A lot of the time they don't in these post-game presses, but yeah, I think it was just something you don't normally hear a player talk about. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let me know if you resonate with anything I just said. But to close out the show here, the Pistons were in the headlines today. They signed Taj Gibson, the veteran center big man, who was last with the Knicks, long-time Chicago Bull, best known for those years there on those Derrick Rose teams, backing up Joakim Noah. They signed him to a 10-day contract. So the Pistons have had 2 roster spots free after waiving most recently Shake Milton, but Taj is going to take up one of those on a 10-day contract. Pistons Twitter and online today reading comments was pretty hilarious. I personally don't really care too much. Like, I think it's interesting to see how it impacts the rotation for sure, because I think because he's only on a 10-day contract, I feel like Monty's going to put him out there either in one of the next 2 games. I feel like it's going to be interesting to see, does he immediately take Wiseman's minutes? I feel like he probably does. If he doesn't take Wiseman's minutes and he's playing, I'll be pulling my hair out. But look, hopefully Taj in his day, and Taj Gibson is like, there's a lot of jokes about it, but he's literally like one of Tom Thibodeau's favorite players. And if you know Tom Thibodeau or Thibodeau, that is because he is a defensive like mastermind, but a guy that just, if you can play defense, you will play bulk minutes for Tom Thibodeau. And Taj Gibson has been like Tom Thibodeau's sidekick. He goes wherever Tibbs goes. And I think that's because he's an excellent defender and has been for much of his career. So hopefully he can come in a short amount of time. I feel like this 10 days just the first of probably, he signs with the team for the rest of the season, unless he's absolutely horrible. But I feel like he's coming in to hopefully show Jalen Duren and James Wiseman to a lesser extent, but show those young bigs how to defend in the pick and roll, how to defend in team defenses. I've actually spoken about, I think Duren's communication's been better, but, ensuring your communication and positioning is up to standard. And, Mike Curtis, I wasn't able to read the article today, so go check out Mike's work with the Detroit News, but he wrote an article on Jalen Duren and how Jalen has expanded his offensive game, but he's very aware the defensive end is where he needs to grow the most. And I think Taj, bringing him in, I like that. It's like I said, this isn't a move I'm angry at or gone crazy about. Like, I just think if he's coming in purely to help your young bigs develop and show them the ropes and maybe hold them accountable on the court, I think that's a huge thing, because the Pistons haven't had a veteran big since Nerlens Noel. So I think bringing in a guy who can be on the court, on the bench, who's played that position in high intensity playoff games, who's been to Eastern Conference Finals, having him hold you accountable, I think, is a lot different to a coach on the bench. Even if you respect your coach, I feel like a guy who's in the league now, that player-to-player relationship, I feel like he can have an impact. So I'm not getting my hopes too high because I know ultimately defense, takes a while to learn, but I really do hope that Taj can help those young guys, improve defensively, the center position. But I think that's the only comments I have on it. Let me know what your thoughts are about it. Yeah, I don't want to see him playing a heap of minutes. I still, no matter what, think that Jalen Duran's a starting big. Stu should be a backup big. But if Taj is going to take some of Wiseman's minutes and that's the rotation we've got, I'm cool with that. So I think I'm going to leave it there, guys. I should be back tomorrow with a recap video of the Pistons game. I'm not sure who they're versing, but hopefully we get a good game. It's a bit sad when you get to this point of the season and the Pistons you can feel like the fan base is pretty much checking out. And this is right when basketball is meant to be its most popular, once NFL is done. But, the past few seasons with Detroit, once we get to this last month or so of the season, and the team's playing as poorly as it has, most fans have checked out. The Red Wings, I know, are playing better. So hopefully we can get some good Pistons basketball. I know that's wishful thinking, but yeah, look, if you're feeling so kind, any support for the show would be awesome. I know I've been missing here and there recently, but that's just due to my job with the NBL. We're in our playoff season at the moment, which has made it tough at times to record. So I'm trying my best to get out as many videos as possible. So any support would be awesome. But till tomorrow, as always, go Pistons.